I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, a brand new guest. I've been a guest on his show, his radio and television, Christian Empire, I guess I should say. And I mean that in a good way because he's getting the word out to people. But I want to start with what I've been talking about. I've been talking about this in the weekly news wrap up. I've been talking about this with some of my guests. I'm talking about the battle between good and evil. And this past week, we have this thing out in Las Vegas, and I'm not going to try to solve it here, an act of pure evil. Apparently a well-orchestrated terror attack. They want you to think, I guess, that it's just one crazy old guy with a lot of guns, but it was, even the sheriff out there says he couldn't have acted alone. And, some people sent this to me. I brought this up again, as I said, in my weekly news wrap-up. They sent me this, Ephesians 6:12. And there it is, boom, right in your face. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. And that's what's going on. And who better to have on than Pastor Rick Wiles? Of course, he's coming to us from True News, TRUNEWS, TrueNews.com in their studios. Rick Wiles, thanks for coming on, USAWatchdog.com, and basically talk about the evil of our time.
Hey, Greg. Thank you for having me here today. It's good to hear your voice again.
Good of you to be on. What do you think about this battle going on? I mean, this is what's going on in the country. I have been doing the news since the 70s, since I was in college, and I've never seen the evil with the people, the politicians, the newscasters that are spilling propaganda. You do True News, and you try to actually put out True, T-R-U-E, True News at True News, T-R-U. Tell me what you're experiencing. What's your feel for what's going on right now?
Greg, when I was called by God into this ministry, I had no journalistic background and no training as a reporter or TV or radio talk show host, but God called me into it and put me in this position, and so I had to learn as I went about this work. But we've always, since the beginning of True News, our first broadcast was May 24, 1999. We have been telling our audience for 18 and a half years that this world, the governments, the corporations, the media, are controlled at the top. Not everybody that's in those institutions, but at the top, there are people who are avowed satanic, Luciferian devil worshipers. And I know that sounds extreme and bizarre to people, but every day that goes by, the more I'm convinced that I've been right all these years, that there is a deeply embedded satanic cult that has gained control of powerful institutions in this country and other nations. You can't escape it. And now, Greg, we're seeing this week, in the aftermath of this Mandalay massacre, we're seeing people on news networks saying, this is evil. There's nothing else to call it. It's evil. Well, if you're going to call it evil, then you have to ask, where does evil come from? And evil comes from one source, one entity, and that is Lucifer, the devil. And what's happening, Greg, is this old world is racing towards its climax, toward the end. And I don't know when the end is going to arrive. I would not even attempt to guess, and would discourage anybody from wasting time attempting to speculate on a date. But one thing is certain. We're deteriorating as a society. Things are getting worse. We're becoming more violent, bloodier, more wars, more conflict, revolution, violence at a level that we've never seen. This is like, medieval times, what's happening right now. And, people need to come to grips with the reality, and that is that there is a clash between a kingdom of darkness and a kingdom of light. These two are coming together. The human race is the prize. Both sides, Satan and God, are fighting over the souls and the eternal destination of 7 billion people on this planet. That's what this is all about. And, we're all shocked by what happened, but there is no other explanation for it. You can spend, countless hours, trying to figure out how it was done, who helped, and all that. But the bottom line is, it's raw evil. It's raw evil committed by a demon-possessed group of people. And it wasn't just one man, there were several people, but those people were possessed by demons. No normal person in his or her right mind would slaughter people like that. You have to be possessed by Satan to carry out such an act. In this country, Greg, I've seen in my lifetime, I grew up in Western Maryland. I was born in 1953. I, grew up in a conservative, rural farm area. And when I went to school, my first year in elementary school was 1959. Dwight Eisenhower was the President of the United States. I remember John F. Kennedy being elected. I remember the Cuban Missile Crisis as a child. But let me tell you, Greg, our public school in the state of Maryland, and this was normal in the state of Maryland in the 1950s, 1960s, the teachers opened the classroom day with the Lord's Prayer, not just some, mamby-pamby little wishy-washy, oh God, be nice to us today. They prayed the Lord's Prayer. They read Bible scriptures to the class, and we said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. That was every day until 1962, at a communist named Madalyn Murray O'Hara went to the Supreme Court and claimed that her little boy was offended by these prayers. That little boy grew up to be William Murray and is now a preacher of the gospel, has renounced his mother, and is leading people to Christ every day. But his mother, a communist, did indescribable damage to this nation by having prayer and Bible reading removed from the public schools. And after that, it's been nonstop judicial decisions for decades removing any mention of God, any recognition of the cross or the name of Jesus Christ or the Bible. And now we have a society that is not only sterile, it's been sterilized of God. Satan is now coming in to fill the vacuum. The first thing that they had to do was to remove God, sanitize the society, and now they defiled the society, and now it's literally becoming a satanic society. We have people who openly confess their love and their allegiance to Satan, and it's becoming normal. Right here in Florida, I'm in Vero Beach, and south of us, down in Boca Raton, south of West Palm Beach, there's a pastor who's, outraged by what's happening. The city council is going to approve a permit for a satanic display to be put up in the city square at Christmas time that says, "One nation under Antichrist." What is happening to this country? We've lost our mind, Greg. We've lost our mind. And the city council and the mayor say, well, these Satanists have their rights too. No, they don't. They don't have any rights. You don't have the right to worship Lucifer. I'm sorry, but this country was founded by Christians. You don't have the right to worship Lucifer in this country. You're going to bring damnation and judgment on the nation. That's what's happening to us, Greg. We're under judgment. It isn't God who's doing it. God is simply stepping aside saying, the American people don't want me there anymore. They've ordered me to get out. The Lord is stepping aside, and Satan is stepping in and saying, I run the show now, and I'm going to make a mess of everything. And that guy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. That's on his business card. That's his business plan, to kill, steal, and destroy. And that's what he's doing in this country. He's running amok. And we're just sitting back and watching it happen. And at some point, moral men and women are going to have to stand up and say, enough of this. We're returning to God and this Bible, and we're going to teach our children the ways of the Lord, and we're going to clean up this nation. We're going to get the filth out of this nation. We're going to cut off the pornography. We're going to stop killing the babies. We're going to return to being a moral nation. Greg, if we don't do it soon, we're going to fall. I'm going to give you a prediction right now. And I've been telling my audience for 18 and a half years, if we, as the American people, do not turn back to God soon, we will be conquered by the Chinese and the Russians. And if you survive it, you will be a slave. That's what's coming. Those are your choices. Turn back to God or become a slave to the Chinese and the Russians. But we're going to get conquered if we don't clean up our act. This cannot go on much longer.
It's very compelling. It's fantastic to have you on. I want to talk about Mark Taylor. I know you've interviewed him before. Now, Mark Taylor says, hey, listen, this is what electing Trump's all about. This is God's anointed, that we are trying to fight back. We're electing people like Donald Trump to come in and try to drain the swamp. It's deep, it's ugly, and people want to hold on to that mud and money. But what about all the? I mean, there's a lot more than 10 people in Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, God said He'd save them if you could just have people that were righteous, and you couldn't find that many. But there's a lot more than that in America. I mean, aren't we fighting back? Isn't there some hope?
Greg, my hope is not in Donald Trump. I voted for him. I supported him. We interviewed Mark Taylor and introduced that prophecy to America and the world. And I do believe that God intervened and stopped the demonic, satanic plan for America. But my hope is not in Donald Trump.
My hope's in Christ as well.
Yes.
But I think He's sending some message.
And so, Greg, what I believe is that the Christian men and women in America must now take this opportunity. We were given a reprieve with the election of Donald Trump. So we have to use this opportunity to reclaim the ground that we lost. It's not up to Donald Trump to make this country a God-fearing country again. That's not his job. He's the President of the United States. We're in this mess because the preachers of America stopped preaching the gospel. They went off chasing other doctrines, other agendas, but they did not stick with the core message, the gospel of Jesus Christ. We're in this mess because they laid down on the job. And so we have this reprieve. Donald Trump's been elected. I believe it's a reprieve in judgment, but he's got a 4-year term. And if the church doesn't do anything, and I'm not talking about politics, I'm talking about proclaiming the true gospel. If the church does not do it in the next 4 years, I think Donald Trump will be a one-term president.
Whoa.
And it will not be his fault, it will be the fault of the church. And the door will go shut, and it will not open again.
Do you think all this debt, and I know you cover a variety of topics. I was just watching past week, you're the early Sunday release, so past week, that Stuart Varney had yet another person on talking about the sovereign debt in Puerto Rico. $74 billion default is the tip of the iceberg. Donald Trump saying, well, some people are going to just lose money. I mean, we have a lot of debt, and a lot of calamity could happen because the Fed's not getting inflation to get enough currency to keep making the payments. And a lot of dark things are happening in the debt. Do you think this is all part of the plan to take down America, over indebt it and then crash it?
Greg, this Bible says that the person who borrows is a servant to the lender. And so this nation has been borrowing trillions of dollars. When I was a kid, America was the lender. Somewhere in my lifetime, we flipped from being the lender to being the borrower. Who did this? Who had this plan, this agenda? Somebody brought us, there was a plan at the very top of this country's food chain to entrap this nation in debt. And so now we're in bondage to foreign lenders. And it's part of judgment. I'm telling you, it's part of judgment. God told the Hebrew people, keep my commandments, teach my laws to your children, make your way moral, and I will bless this land. But if you break my commandments, if you turn from me, you will become slaves to foreigners. They will own your houses and your farms. You'll work for them. The reason that we're in this,
and that's what happened, and that's what happened, is it not?
Yes. And so it doesn't, for me, it doesn't matter what issue we're talking about, whether it's political or social or economic, it all comes back to America's rejection of Jesus Christ and the Bible, starting in 1962. And until we go back and fix that problem, none of these other problems are going to go away. They're only going to get worse. It's part of the judgment that's on a rebellious people. I know the American people don't want to hear it, but the American people are rebellious against God. There is a significant portion of people in this country who are in a state of rebellion against God. And it cannot last. It will not last. It will bring the roof down on all of us. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. And the just are going to suffer because of the wicked in this country.
You know, it's funny, I was getting to that. Before I move on, I know that you are an ordained minister and pastor of Flowing Streams in Vero Beach, so you know that. So you wear a couple of hats here. You are, of course, the face and the voice of True News, but you also are a pastor. You also have big-time experience with CBN and Trinity Broadcasting. You've been in the game, or I should say ministry, for a long time. And that's what I wanted to ask you. What about all the people who do follow you? You have explosive growth. Those are Christians watching you, not Muslims or Buddhists or atheists or agnostics. You've had explosive growth. What about the people that are trying? What about the people that are listening? Does the rain fall on the wicked and the righteous just like that? I mean, is that all there is?
Greg, I've been telling our audience that they need to be prepared spiritually for this nation to fall. That is a real possibility. The nation will fall. I'm not predicting it. I'm not calling for it. I hope it doesn't happen, but I've been telling our audience for years, you have to be prepared for the possibility the nation falls, because the majority of the country chooses to rebel against God. If the nation falls, God will preserve his remnant inside the country, but we'll all suffer for it. Listen, if North Korea detonates an EMP blast over this country, we're all going to suffer. The lights aren't going to stay on for the Christians and go out for the non-Christians. The lights are going to go out for everybody. We're all going to be in the dark. But the Christians are going to look at each other and say, why did we allow this to happen? We knew this was going to happen. God's Word tells us that when a nation turns against God, invaders will come and conquer the land. Why didn't we act on what we knew was going to happen? That's what I fear the most. This sense of regret that there's going to be a national calamity so great, so overwhelming, that we're going to sit in the ashes of this nation and weep and cry that we were unwilling to take on the giants in this land, the giants of pornography, the giants of abortion, the giants of greed, the giants of sexual perversion in this country. We've got to take on these giants, or we are going to be devoured by the giants that we have allowed in our land.
It seems like there's just one team in Washington. I mean, you see the anti-Trumpers, the Republicans, the Jeff Flakes of the world, the Bob Corkers of the world, the Lindsey Grahams of the world. They seem like they are intent on attacking Donald Trump, who had a big backing of Christians, which is really an attack on God. I mean, I think that's what the Emmys were all about, not just attacking Trump. I think they were attacking God. Is there a way for us to fight back? Is there some good news here?
Yes, preach the gospel. You know, as far as the two parties, I've said for years that what we have is one party. It's the perpetual war, corruption, sleaze, and pedophilia party. And that's what's running this country. It is a criminal cabal that is devoted to perpetual war, corruption, sleaze, and child molestation. These people that run this country are perverts. They're criminals. And they're in both parties. They're in the news media. They're in Hollywood. They're in the banking system. They are spread out throughout this country. It's an invisible network of Satanists that are in control of this country. And you see the clash. They hate God. They hate Christians. They hate morality. And so why should we be surprised? I mean, it just came out recently that Sally Quinn, the Washington Post religion editor, was married to Ben Bradley, the editor of the Washington Post. She openly admits now, oh, I'm an occultist. Really? You're an occultist. And there's no shock. Nobody says, did you hear that the Washington Post religion editor is an occultist? She's devoted to satanic occult rituals? Well, I'm not shocked. I've been saying this, Greg, for 18 and a half years on the radio.
They want you to believe that God is a myth, but they worship Satan. I mean, Hillary Clinton, Saul Alinsky, she brought him into Wellesley to speak. I mean, he offered her a job, supposedly. I mean, he dedicated his book to Satan, Lucifer, whatever. I mean, the hero of Hillary's hero is Satan or Lucifer, because at least he had a kingdom, according to Saul Alinsky, which, you know, I mean, these people worship Satan. I mean, I believe in Satan. I just think he's a weasel liar. They get zero respect. But these people, they don't.
No,
they make no mistake. Yes.
They're part. I mean, they're part of his kingdom. They're warriors in his kingdom. You know why they're warriors? They're waiting on him to return. They're waiting on his return to this earth. I'm talking about a physical manifestation of Lucifer himself. That's what they're waiting for. They're calling him from the abyss. They're waiting on him to come forth. The Bible calls this person the son of perdition, the man of destruction. This is going to be a human being totally, completely possessed by Lucifer, the dragon. But that's what they're waiting for. They're anticipating the arrival of the son of perdition. I personally believe, Greg, that what is coming to this planet before Jesus Christ returns is a restoration of the one world satanic empire that existed on this planet before the great flood of Noah's time. I believe that Lucifer ruled this world after the fall of Adam and Eve. I believe Lucifer ruled this world, and that the reason God destroyed humanity at the time of the great flood was because it had become so perverse, so wicked and evil, that God said, I regret I ever made man. And he saved Noah and his family and started over. Immediately after the flood, Lucifer began working for his restoration of his kingdom. And we're at that point right now, Greg, that the Luciferian devil worshipers are eagerly anticipating the arrival of their god, Lucifer. And that includes, listen, Satan's got all kinds of denominations. He's got Freemasons, the Illuminati. You know, he's got Rosicrucians, he's got New Agers, he's got denominations everywhere. But they're all working for the same god, Lucifer. And they are excited. That's why they're killing. That's why these are blood sacrifices. What took place in Las Vegas on Sunday, that was a human blood sacrifice. They sacrificed humans to Lucifer in an orgy of bloodletting. This is what Satan does, and it's going to get worse.
The Luxor Hotel, the Pyramid Hotel, was there between that and the Mandalay.
And the 32nd floor.
No, 32nd degree Mason.
Yes.
Well, then there's all kinds of other video coming out that it was more than one shooter. I mean, come on, you can't
Of
say
course. Of course there was.
It's a
I think
well-orchestrated. It's not a crazy guy with a gun. I mean, it's just absurd.
I think we're gonna find out, Greg, to get that many guns into the hotel, that much ammo, and the cameras and everything else. I don't see any way he could have done it without the assistance of somebody employed in the security operation of the Mandalay Hotel.
Oh, that's big. Well, I've heard too that they had sound effects and they compared an M60 machine gun to the sound that was at the Mandalay. An M60, you can't buy an M60 machine gun. That's not a trigger bump. I do want to bring up one thing that is the fly in the ointment for the Luciferians. And, anybody that believes in Jesus Christ knows it's well documented. The movie The Case for Christ really shows you how well documented it is, how well documented, scientifically documented. I don't need that, I have faith. But for anybody that even thinks it's not well documented, the birth and death and the resurrection of Christ, they should look at that movie, The Case for Christ. But, this is the fly in the ointment right here. And this is the red letter stuff from Matthew. And it is all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. That is very clear that is the fly in the ointment here, that he can't just go back to where it was. Could you explain this? I mean, he's not the ruler of this world, according to Jesus Christ himself. All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. This is from the lips of Christ. Can you explain this, Reverend?
God is the creator of the earth. Satan does not own the earth, the planet. Satan owns the world. The world is the system that runs this life. Satan runs the world. At Calvary, at the cross, Jesus Christ defeated Lucifer. He defeated Satan, hell, the grave, death, and he made a spectacle of Lucifer, humiliated him. All the demons that followed Lucifer hung their head in shame because their big hero, Lucifer, was defeated at Calvary. When Jesus Christ came out of that grave, he had the keys of hell in his hands. Listen, those 3 days Jesus was in the grave, he wasn't being tortured by demons. He was preaching to the multitude of people who had died from the time of Adam and Eve until the crucifixion. They were being held in Hades, and Jesus Christ had the greatest soul-winning crusade that's ever been held. And he led the souls out of Hades. It was a spectacular event. All authority is in his hands. I personally believe, Greg, I believe there's a lot of erroneous teaching in the American evangelical Protestant churches, and this is probably not the time to get into it, but I believe that the reign of Christ is not a millennial reign in the future. I believe it's now. The church fathers taught that the 1,000 years was a symbol of an unlimited amount of time between the resurrection and the second coming, and that during that time, Christ would reign through his church. And so when we preach the gospel, the chains on Satan are wound up tighter. And when we don't preach the gospel, the chains are loosed, and that rascal's got a lot more leeway to run around and do his damage. So what we've got to do right now is start preaching the pure gospel again and tighten that chain on him, because there will be a day that he will be let loose for a season, for a short time. And that is the time that he appears on this earth in the form of the son of perdition, and he will lead the nations to their destruction. And that's what he's warming up for. This is what they're anticipating. And I don't know if we're really at that place, or whether the church has just been amiss and not reigning, not allowing Christ to reign through them, and we're allowing Lucifer to run amok in this world. But I know this: we are to preach the gospel with all our heart, mind, and soul, until the day Jesus Christ comes back. We're to gather as many lost souls as we can possibly gather. We're to do the work of the kingdom until there's no breath in us or Christ himself has come through the sky. But I know this, the days are getting darker. And the only thing that can change the situation is the light of the gospel. And so that's why we're making a radical transformation in what we've been doing, Greg. I've been doing a radio program for 18 and a half years. We ended it a few days ago. We're starting with a television program on October 16. It's going to be nationally syndicated on DirecTV and Dish Network and multiple television stations and cable systems all over the country. It'll be airing 4 or 5 times a day nationally. And we are going to proclaim the gospel with all of our heart, mind, and soul in a news format. But we're going to tell the people, Christ is coming. Get your affairs in order. Stop sinning. If you're caught up in pornography, if you're caught up in liquor and booze and drugs, cut it out. If you're caught up in adultery or fornicate, you've got to stop. You've got to repent. You've got to come to Christ now. If you're a Christian and you've been doing these things, repent and come back to Christ. We're in the end of the age, and you've got to be ready. Those people in Las Vegas, do you think any of them expected to die last Sunday? None of them. They were in Vegas, a city that says what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. It's Sin City. They brag that it's Sin City. Well, Satan's showing you what Sin City looks like, and it's not pretty. And he's got more plans to do this to other cities. And the only safety any of us has is being hidden under the shadow of the Lord, under his wings. If he's not protecting you, we're vulnerable. We're living in an age of nuts and demon-possessed people. I mean, we've already forgotten about the church shooting. Think about that, Greg. We've already forgotten that the week before there was a church shooting. What's coming next week? When does this stop? When will the American people cry out to God and say, save us?
Rick Wiles, I knew there's a reason why I had you on. I booked you, and we prayed. Actually, I'll tell people before this. We actually prayed that I would ask the right questions and you would say the right words. I actually prayed that last night. I said, I don't know what I'm going to talk to him about. Please just help me put on the right thing. And boy, you sure did. You sure did, and I praise Jesus Christ for that. And your prayer worked before this. You didn't see it, nobody saw this, but we actually prayed before this interview, and that was fantastic. Rick Wiles, you can still find you at True News, TRUNEWS.com. I'll put all the links in afterwards. Reverend Rick Wiles, thank you for coming on and preaching right out of the Bible and letting us know what we have to do, and that there's hope.
All right, Greg. Hey, you're doing a great job. Come and see us sometime.
Thanks for being on, Rick Wiles of True News.